and welcome to yet another program of the JCTR Corner. I am your host, Alice Maplanga, and thank you for joining me on this program where we use it as a platform to discuss various issues that affect all of us in our nation today. On the program today, we will be discussing the access to information as well as the legislature pertaining to access to information. And joining me on the program are two gentlemen that I have with me who will help us discuss the two issues. We have with us Mr. Austin Kayanda, who is Mr. Zambia Country Director, joining us today. Welcome to the program, Mr. Kayanda.
Thank you.
And also in the program, we have Mr. Joseph Lungu, who is from the JCTR's Faith and Justice Program. Welcome to the program, Mr. Lungu.
Thank you very much.
Now, to discuss this issue in detail and going forward, before we talk about anything else, what would you say access to information is for the people out there who've just been hearing access to information or ATI? Mr. Kayanda?
Yeah, basically access to information is the ability to have the information when you want it so that you are able to make an informed decision. The information we're talking about, it's basically information in public domain. And you may be aware that access to information is a basic human right. It's not even a privilege. And this access to information basically is enshrined in our Constitution. To receive, exchange, and disseminate information is in our Constitution. It's also backed by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 19, also which makes it a human right. So access to information, basically, it's the ability to have the information you need, when you need it, and for you to make an informed decision.
Okay, so now that we know what access to information is, Mr. Lungu, would you help us with maybe giving a historic account of access to information, particularly in Zambia after independence?
Well, the issue, of course, today we use the terminology access to information, but before that, I think terms like freedom of information have been used. Under the one-part rule, the government monopolized all the instruments for disseminating information. Of course, the then UNIP government used the liberation struggle in the region as grounds on which it constrained the type of information and to what extent information could be accessed. This was made possible with another odd registration, which is a carryover from the colonial time. Just as we are struggling to dismantle the Public Order Act, we have the National Archives Act in itself, which is very limitative because as it stands today in Zambia, the statute of limitation on information held by public bodies is 20 years after the day that information became inactive, which is not fair, not useful for the public, because we need information in the here and now. The development of that in the 70s coming into the 80s, the national broadcaster was regulated and more skewed towards the position of the government, more or less like a propaganda tool. After the multi-party democracy was introduced, a number of proposals and bills were put across. In all the four subsequent constitutional commissions that sat to take the recommendations from the public, he heard that people wanted to access information. The current push for the ATI bill to be tabled before Parliament for possible enactment into law goes way back to 2002, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So I've got a lobbying, a campaign that has been going on for 17 years.
Okay. So now you talked about the fact that you've been working on this for 17 years. That's almost 2 decades.
Yes.
The two organizations being the JCTR and NISA Zambia have been working tirelessly to try and put access to information into law. How have the two organizations worked together, and why do you think there's been no traction made in having it get into the Constitution?
Well, basically, what it is if you follow the history of access to information, initially it was a private members bill. It was initiated by then called Zima, Zambia Zambia Institute of Zima. Now, when the people drafted the first draft of the access to info, by then it was freedom of information, the government took over, and they said they wanted to enact it because of public interest. If you look at the first draft of the information freedom of information bill, it was drafted by lawyers who were engaged by MISA. Apparently, our current head of state was a lawyer, a MISA lawyer, who was in the panel, including the Speaker of the National Assembly and other several lawyers. They drafted the first bill, which was taken to Parliament, but withdrawn immediately.
Why was it withdrawn?
Well, basically, there was no political will, and also, up to now, politicians are very uncomfortable with the access to information. They think that access to information basically is for journalists, and once it's enacted, we are going to start investigating and probing into their private life.
Okay, now you've talked about one of the historic processes that has taken part in trying to get the piece of information into law, and other processes have taken place where there's been some traction made, but it hasn't then been fulfilled into it being into law. Why would you say there's been no political will? Is it because you think as a country maybe we want to not be held accountable for the processes that we have, particularly in the public institutions?
We can conclude that, because if you look at the MMD government, they campaigned on the basis of free information. Yes. If you look at the PF government, with them they even went a step further by promising to enact the access to information within 90 days. Apparently, the way how life is, when you're on the other side, such laws are good. But when you cross over to the other side, they become bad. Mm-hmm.
Do you think, maybe Mr. Lungu, you can help me with this, is it because there's a lack of understanding of what access to information is? Or is it because we then now see how it's used as a tool to then help those in power stay in power?
No, basically, I would say within Zambian society, we've got this culture of secrecy. This culture of secrecy permeates almost every society, even private, where we guard information without realizing that information to be of use, it has to be accessed. So this mindset makes it even difficult for the public to understand. That is why there's this confusion between the media law and the access to information law, because a good segment of the public think the access to information will empower journalists, without realizing that actually the access to information law will actually create a way in which the public, the governed, can communicate with the government. You know, you can only hold somebody accountable if you know exactly what they are doing. There is the apathy in Zambia when we look at, let's say, the Auditor General's report. No matter how bad it comes out, nobody in the public is agitated, for the simple reason that they look at those simply as articles which journalists publish without realizing that the very document, for example, the AG, Auditor General's report, it's based on information that is held by public bodies, which if the public can access, then they can help keep public officers, the government, in check.
Now, you've spoken about the misconception that access to information is only for media personnel. Should then access to information be tied to media law, Mr. Kayanda?
No, the two are mutually exclusive. Basically, if you are talking of media law, you are talking of the ethics of journalism. But access to information, basically, it's any information in public domain that assists you make an informed decision. I mean, government is the custodian of all the information in the country, and people must be informed and must be well informed for them to make a decision. I mean, even when you want to hold people accountable, you cannot hold people accountable on something you don't know. The duty holders have the right to that information so that they can probe and hold the duty holders accountable for their actions.
Okay. Mr. Lungu, can you speak to that?
Yes. Let's say apparently, a good example is the issue of debt, public debt, other debts that the government contract. These are huge sums of money. Of course, it's necessary the government needs that money. But shouldn't the taxpayer and everybody else whose money is going to contribute to pay for that debt be involved in the contraction? Shouldn't people know on what grounds is our country contracting such debt? And if the debt is contracted, do the monies that come in go to the objective for which it was taken? We see a lot of robust projects going around, extravagant expenses on the part of duty bearers. Surely, shouldn't the public have the right to check and say, is this the way we are running our country? It is not the country of the government, it is our country. Therefore, every database, every information pertaining to its running is public property, with a few exceptions, maybe to do with security. Of course, there are certain security areas in which for the sake of the safety of everybody, I may put in check my right to access information, but that should be an exception and not the norm. Because most often, a lot of information, a lot of bad government practices go unchecked for the simple reason that when information is very sensitive in a negative way, you simply classify it as confidential.
Okay. So now, this access to information is supported by various other laws, and one of them that you pointed to is the National Archives Law. What impact do they have on the ATI, and maybe going forward, are those the laws that maybe need reform as well?
Well, at the moment, for example, the archives, the National Archives laws are not abreast with development in information management, the way we manage information in the 21st century. For example, in olden times, in conventional ways, most often hard copy documentation is what we call information. But this day we have got information that is sitting on digital databases. So have our archives also incorporated in the system, in conserving information in that way, and also making retrieval in that way efficient and applicable to a wider segment of society. Then Zambia is also a signatory to the convention regarding the rights of people with disabilities. To what extent do we put certain essential public information in format that is accessible by people with disabilities? I can give a simple example. The copy of the Constitution, that's a national document that applies to everybody. But have you ever come across a Constitution that is in Braille for the blind?
No, actually, I have not. But before we continue with that and maybe think about what pieces of documentation from the government we have seen in formats that are available to the people with disabilities, we'll take a short break and we will be right back. Be sure to stay with us.
To advertise on this program and enjoy amazing introductory rates, please call us on +260 211 290959 or +260 211 290912 or +260 953 538 000 or send us an email at loyolazam@gmail.com.
Thank you for joining us. Now, before we went to break, we were talking about the fact that maybe our archives law needs to take into account the various technological advancements that have been made, as well as be inclusive to those with disability. Now, maybe going forward, we've talked about the fact that we have no ATI legislator that's currently pertaining in our country. Does the absence of this law deny the people a participatory role in governance, you feel, Mr. Kayanda?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Maybe before I explain further, I would like to refer you, if you go to our website, www.misa.com, you'll find a research we do every year. It's called the Golden Padlock and Key. It's a mystery shopping where we do a research on how easily accessible the information is from government. Apparently, what we normally do is we commission somebody who is not related to MISA to go at random. We pick on maybe 10 ministries and government-funded agencies to go and access information. And if you look at the conclusion of that report, is that every time you go to any ministry, you will be told, who are you? What do you want? Who sent you? What is this information for? Can you go and put it in writing? You go and put it in writing. No, this request has been referred to the PS. You go to the PS. No, this request has been referred to the minister. You go to the minister. No, this request has been referred to cabinet. You will never get that information. So what that means is that because of the bureaucracy within government, we are creating an information gap. Mm-hmm. And that information gap is really very dangerous because for whatever reason, people must find information to fill that gap. And this is what we now term as fake news, false news, and inappropriate news, and so forth. But if we had access to information, we are going to get correct information at the right time and make correct decisions. Now, with this information gap, with the lack of access to information gap, it is very, very dangerous, actually, for the country. It's not good for the individuals. It's not good for the country. It's not good for the nation as a whole. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So would you then say the fact that people are having a hard time accessing information, that would then impede on their participation in governance?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Just like what my colleague said, was that we have very important documents that are not prescribed in the right format for people to access. Now, I'll give you an example. Even the Constitution itself, we know for sure that in Zambia, only 23% of the population, they've got higher qualifications, higher institutional qualifications. About 35 to 40% they've matriculated in Form 5. The rest of the people can hardly speak English. Now, are we translating the important documents in local languages which people can understand and appreciate. We don't. We have newspapers. People cannot read the newspapers, and they just use newspapers for other conventional methods because to them it doesn't make any sense. But what we are saying is let's deliver the information. It's not only the ability to have that information, but we must deliver that information in the right format so that people can appreciate, understand, and be able to participate.
Now, Mr. Lungu, maybe we are in a social media age where this is one of the tools that information is readily available to everyone at any time. How would you say that social media is affecting people's information consumption?
Well, I mean, as he said, the vacuum created because of the absence of laws that allow people to access information. Somebody else is going to oblige. And of late in Zambia, we've got seen a huge growth of what they call it, the citizenship journalism.
Journalism, yes.
You see?
Citizens journalism.
I mean, anybody with the gadgets that can capture data which can be processed information can now post, which is different from professional journalism, which has got checks and balances, ethics and stuff. So in the process, we have even what could be classified information now being recklessly peddled to the people, lies and the like. And in the process, people are deprived of the correct information on which they can base judgment, conclusion, and make decisions. And probably even individuals can get injured. You see, because a person who uses the social platform can be an individual, not bound by any code of ethics or whatsoever. And this is what of late has led to people terming the same terminologies like fake news and the like. You see. So if the government can oblige and make people have access to the correct information, because for me, I strongly believe access to information registration will be a good counterbalance to fake news. You see, if a person has got the facts, then a person can easily make a decision to reject what is not correct news.
So with the coming of media law, would you then say there is need for an umbrella over social media as well, and maybe will that help the way people access information on social media?
Well, it's very interesting to know that in Zambia we don't have a media policy. And we have been pushing for that. The media policy was drafted in 1996, and it has been on the shelf since then. It's only now that P.S. Kasolo is trying to push the agenda to have the media policy enacted. Now, if you don't have a media policy, then you don't have some sort of a policy guidelines to direct the people how they need to move in the direction. And because of that, it has affected a lot of things. Things like a lack of access to information and so forth. And also, I would like to mention that, you see, within our statutes, we have old, archaic information that is not even fit for the modern generation. I mean, we have laws that were crafted in 1927, 1935, like defamation of the king, defamation of the president, publication of false news. All those laws, you can't find them in modern democracy. All those laws must be done away with. So it's not only the access to information, but also we should look at all those laws that deprive a citizen or takes away the right to access to information and freedom of expression.
So going forward, how would you say citizens should be able to help push for access to information to become legislature? Because obviously we've talked about the fact that there's the misconception that it's only for the media personnel.
Yeah, basically, if you remember not long ago, the government was asking like an institution like MISA to say, who do you talk for? We became lone voices. Until when we created a coalition to say, look here, this is not our fight. It's a fight for everybody. If you remember in 2017, using the structures the church has, which the structures the church has, we went around the country and we got over 435,000 signatures petitioning Parliament to enact the law. So you can see even people at the grassroots level, once you explain what the importance of this type of legislation, they will definitely agree with you, and they signed that petition.
Now, what would you say are some of the advantages of having access to information enacted into law?
Well, like we said that at the beginning, people need to make informed decisions. You see, people need to make informed decisions. Within a short time, we'll be going to the elections in Zambia. I mean, 2021 is not very far away. And it is during this period when people are fed with lies, promises that cannot be delivered. Now, if public bodies that hold information can be given the duty to accord this right to the people to access information, then people will be better informed to better analyze the candidates who will be coming their way seeking their vote. You see, it is easier to make blanket statement of what a certain political party can achieve once in government, or what the incumbent government has achieved. But have those achievements been done independent of the people? For example, when a road is constructed, is that charity, is that gratuity, or that road is financed by the tax I pay? You see, so if I can access information, then I can know that project was handled like this. This one is a grant aid from there. Therefore, it's not the credit of this individual who's saying that he or they are bringing development for me. So the benefit are that when there is the disclosure of information, people can access information, people will better assess the performance of public bodies, and also the public bodies themselves will be helped or protected against defamation because they'll be transparent and nobody can accuse them of anything.
Okay. So now maybe speaking to the fear, that is what we might conclude, seeing how long it's taken the governments, the various governments, present and past, to take this into law. What maybe would you say are some of the benefits that this law might bring to the governments themselves?
Look, basically, it enhances democracy. It will give the rights to the duty holders to make the duty bearers accountable. And two, we've seen a lot of corruption issues being reported in the media. But if we had this access to information, people will be able to know the truth. You know, at the moment, you don't know whether to believe the story or not. But you see, as a journalist, you cannot do investigative journalism without access to information. Because even the Auditor General's report, if you want to do some investigative journalism on the misapplication of funds, theft of funds, you need to get that information, and you cannot tell the people. And not only that, even cases where we hear of a case, a growing story in the media, it's very inconclusive because you cannot go beyond a certain stage because you have no information.
Okay, so now we've heard everything that there is to know about the access to information and who it benefits and how it benefits the country. What would be your last words to our viewers going forward in regards access to information?
Access to information is not for journalists. Access to information is for everybody. We need that law like yesterday, and people should demand for it. It will not only benefit the citizens, but it will also assist the government itself, because also the government in power needs to tell the people what they've done and what they are doing. And you see, when we have access to information, then it means both ways. The informed will get the correct information. The informer will give the correct information without fearing that there will be reprisal or anything else. So we need that information. That access to information bill is very, very necessary, and it's very, very important. And we are appealing to the head of state to push this access to information and enact it into a law. And I must admit that P.S. Kasolo has promised that before he leaves office, he would possibly try to deliver this access to information. I only hope he can keep his word.
Mr. Lungu, any last words?
Well, for the people out there, do not wait for the journalists to publish problems. It is your government. We're in a democracy. Since not all of us can rule, we entrust the power to rule in the hands of the government. Therefore, you have the right to know what the people with whom you have entrusted the power to rule are doing. It is your right. Engage your civic leaders, your MPs, and say, we want access to information law so that we can know. And this will help us in seeing the transparency and accountability in the way Zambia is governing. It is your right, not a charity from the government.
Definitely not a charity. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Kayanda, Mr. Lungu, for joining us on the program today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is all we had for you today, but be sure to join us right here on Loyola TV, same time every week. I am your host, Alice Maplanga, and for now, it's goodbye.